Thursday, July 7th. So that means this is another our Land and Water Metro Muskie report. Where the bite's at right now, the open water bite is just about done. This previous week, I only heard of one first-hand account of a fish being caught over open water, and that fish was a cast length off of structure, and it was marked on side imaging right next to a ball of bait, so that fish was super active. If you love fishing open water, there is an open water bite year-round. It's not as prevalent in our metro weed-based lakes as it is in some of the shield Cisco-based lakes, but if you love driving around looking for bait and then casting that bait, there is a bite all year round, and you can catch fish doing that. But most of us, like myself, have been looking forward to the bite that's getting ready to kick off right now, and that's that weed edge structure-based bite. So let's take a quick look at a map and see where you can find muskies right now. Okay, so let's take a quick look at location. These fish that were over open water have kind of seemed to transition back into the spots that we were highlighting in mid-June. And by that, I kind of mean these post-spawn spots like these. This is a classic, the submerged points and underwater humps located over main lakes, as well as spots like this, which is kind of these shallow, featureless, large weed beds that are often associated with bays. Right now, like always, these muskies are associated with bait, but there's kind of a nuance to this right now where it seems like the muskies that are following the bait that are higher in the water column are significantly more active than those, sitting around bait that are lower in the water column or in the bottom half of the water column. So what I would do different compared to what I would say like August into early September where you're just buzzing weed edges looking for a reaction bite is you're going to want to fish these spots kind of in 100% totality to locate spots on the spot where this bait that's high in the water column is kind of congregated. So let's take a quick look at this point that comes off the south side here. And the way I would fish this right now is I would start with kind of your classic strategy that's sitting outside the point, casting that weed edge, go all the way around, and then I would kind of swing through and almost make like a corkscrew, where then I would have my boat on the weed edge, casting up on top. The reason I would do this is because, let's just say, for the sake of clarity, that I fish this entire outside edge and I don't find any bait that is sitting on top. And I'm saying I'm not finding any what I'll call dimplers. That's where when you cast your lure and you make contact with the surface, you spook bait fish that were immediately under the surface. That's what you're looking for right now. So if you're not finding that on the outside edge, then you're going to want to swing through like this and get your boat on the edge and cast up on top and see if you can find some of that bait up on top of the point that may be on top of the water column. Now let's take a look at a big weed bed. The way that I would approach a weed bed like this is I would kind of do like something kind of like this. I'd check, and then kind of the spots that when you run your boat like this, the spots that you're hitting are kind of like this area, you're hitting this area, you're hitting this outside edge, hitting back in here. This is kind of giving you a good coverage of a really large weed bed to kind of take sample size portions and see if you can find some bait. So let's say this spot here and this spot here, we're holding a bunch of bait on the surface. We're getting a bunch of dimplers. Then obviously what I do is I loop back around and I change my path to just go like this. Just swing through the shallow portion of that weed bed. And if I got two people, I might have one person going in, one person going out, maybe throwing some different stuff that's going to stay over the top of the weeds. And we'll get into more lures in the next section here. But the goal for the next 7 days, find bait in the top half of that water column. If you have a nice calm day and you can find some dimplers, you should really be able to tune in on these muskies. So now that we know where we're finding muskies and we're looking for those bait high in the water column, or those dimplers as I'll call it, let's take a look at lures that we should be throwing right now. Specifically, when you find some dimplers, what should you be throwing at them? And if you can't find any dimplers and all these bait fish are located deeper in the water column, how should we be targeting those fish? So let's start with dimplers. If you can find some dimplers, whether it's off the edge or up on top of the structure, what should we be throwing at them? I actually got a couple different lures here that I like to use, especially this time of the year, because it's not 100% blades yet. You can catch them using a variety of different lures. But to that point, obviously blades, that's the ultimate one. This is a purple gold. I love purple gold really anywhere I fish, but it's really good in Metro. This is one I built myself, but it's kind of like a musky frenzy. It's a number 9. Colorado, number 8 Indiana. Really just a nice bucktail, runs high in the water column, pretty heavy. I like building my bucktails heavy. So any kind of bucktail, double 8s, double 9s, double 10s, you can throw supermodels. Anything that you can keep over the top of those weeds and pull them through those dimplers is good for a bucktail right now. Another option that I like, kind of an overlooked lure over the top of weeds. I like these little shallow swimming dogs. Running these on a high-speed reel, you can actually cook these pretty quick, and you can run them almost like a bucktail up over the top of the weeds. You get crazy tail kick, and these seem to really kick out fish that are highly pressured. Kind of a jerk bait. This is a sand cat. I love working sand cats in skinny water, where you got weeds that are growing up to within a foot of the surface. You can kind of give these little pops, and they'll just kind of dive and they'll rise, dive and they'll rise. It won't work as deep as like a suic or a bar fighter will. You can see I like to work these in shield lakes. The nose is all beat up, so I work it in skinny rocks, but it'll work just as good in some skinny weeds areas. If you have a really nice calm morning, really any time of day, if you have really flat, calm water, one of my favorite top waters to fish is a flaptail. This is a TR custom flaptail that I got a couple years ago. Work it really slow on a low-speed reel. Like my low-speed reels are Calcuttas, so I love to work this on a Calcutta setup. Really gets a nice tink where this flaptail comes up and hits the back of this peg. So let's say you aren't finding any dimplers. Say it's an overcast day when you got a little bit of wind. Sometimes those dimplers, they get a little bit deeper in the water column, so they aren't as high. A couple ways I'd like to approach these. First, go back to a bucktail. You can fish a bucktail in all scenarios. The only thing I would change is if these fish are off the edges and they're a little bit deeper, maybe add some weight. I like to add a bell sinker to the front hook of these bucktails. If you have a Musky Frenzy built lure, those tend to be a little heavier as well, so that would work that way. Another one I haven't really talked about much is crankbaits. So this is a crane bait. I'm not exactly sure on the model. We call it a stubby, just in our group of friends. But this is kind of an interesting lure because it has a really, when retrieved, it's got a really kind of cool dive curve. You give it a couple quick rips, and that thing will dive down 4 or 5 feet, and then it kind of planes out, and it has a really tight wobble. This is kind of a cool lure to work off the edges. Moves a ton of fish. And then lastly is the obvious rubber. Any kind of rubber will work off of edges, but this is a deep tube with a heavier harness on it, and I could run a blade off the back, Colorado blade. You could run a Bulldog, Medusa, beaver, a weighted beaver if you want to. Any kind of rubber will work great when those fish aren't up on the surface. Coming up for weather, through the weekend here, we have dropping pressure, pretty minimal winds until Sunday. Then that pressure will bottom out and then start rising through the week, and we'll have our peak of days. We'll get pretty heavy wind, talking 14 miles per hour, varying the direction. And the next week is full moon week, so we should have pretty good bite windows next week. I think there'll be a lot of fish caught, especially as this bite switches more towards blades. But for now, find those dimplers, and you'll find some fish. I'm traveling the next couple weeks, so I won't be having these formal reports next 2 weeks. So if you want to find a report in the next coming weeks, follow us on Instagram. I'll put a brief little snippet out there, and that's at @OurLandWater on Instagram. We're gonna get on the lake tonight, as well as a couple times this weekend before I start traveling. So looking forward to breaking my slump, and hopefully you guys can get in some fish as well.